the best thing for y'all at the time. And he's like, I was not mature enough to be a father yet.
Yeah. I mean, 17, what 17-year-old is? I mean,
Right.
I know people in their 20s that are not, I wasn't ready. And I had 3 kids before I was 25.
Mhm.
So I completely understand that. You talk about how close you and your mom were. You were talking about the nicknames that you guys went by, baby and honey, right?
Mhm.
And talking about bathing and sleeping together. Did you ever feel like the relationship was an enmeshment?
It was. I really felt that way. I also like when I was little, my mom was like my best friend, and
Yeah.
that's what I chalked it up to. I didn't go to school,
Mm-hmm.
so growing up around other kids was very rare. There may have been the neighborhood kids, my cousins, but few and far between interaction with
Right.
kids my age. And so when I was little, my stuffed animals, my Barbie dolls, my mom was my
Social life.
everything, my
Yeah.
social life.
Yeah.
So that's what I grew up knowing. And then as I got older, I felt it was almost like being sheltered, but
Mm-hmm.
also taking the part of a partner or spouse in a marriage. So all of her stress would be shared to me.
Right.
And I was kind of expected to carry all of this and be that person that she needed me to be.
Right. So you were the daughter, the friend, the partner,
Everything.
all
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
things at from a really, really young
Yeah,
age.
it's like having a bad marriage without the sexual part of it.
That's and how do you feel about that now? Do you feel like you'll know sort of where the boundaries are for your daughter when she's born?
Absolutely. Like I feel like I don't think there's anything wrong with a close relationship with your parent or your daughter.
Right.
But there's a line
Yeah.
between normal and weird.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I have a hard time. I have a 15-year-old and then I have 7 kids all the way down to the age of 1. And so I have a really hard time with the parents that call their children their best friends
Mhm.
because I feel like you have to be their parent first.
Right.
And I think sometimes parents, and I've done it at times too, and that's why I speak from experience, is like the blurring that line
Mhm.
and then having to take a step back and be like, okay, wait, I'm your parent first. And it can
Right.
be difficult.
You could be that person that they come
For
to
sure.
and be that person to lean on.
Absolutely.
But to say best friend, like, no, you go to school, you
Right.
make your own friends,
Right.
but I'm here if you need
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
me.
There's definitely clear lines that we have to set. But
Yeah.
in the book you talk about your baby bottles. And
Mhm.
I don't think that I ever heard that in like the headlines or the shows or the
Mhm.
documentaries. Is that something that is exclusive to this book?
It is. It's not something that I really tell everybody or talk
Right.
about because I mean it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I
Are you
just
comfortable talking about it
yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean it's in the books.
Okay. Definitely go get a copy of this book, My Time to Stand. And so in the book, you talk about having a baby bottle, and up until the night of the crime,
Mhm.
you were packing a baby bottle in your
Correct.
bag.
Correct.
What was that about? Can you talk about it?
Well, my mom never weaned me off the baby bottle.
Like, we're
Um,
talking a bottle with nipples because you
yes,
talk
like
about
a
bringing
baby
change.
bottle.
Yes.
Yes. So, I was given formula through the feeding tube,
Hmm.
but also my comfort. I never like took to a stuffed animal or a blankie or anything, but I loved the bottle.
Okay.
And so, like strawberry Pediasure was my favorite.
Hmm.
And my mom never said, "Oh, you're too old for that."
Okay.
She just let me continue on the bottle.
Sure.
To the point where I think that that's why my teeth were buck teeth. My original teeth were bucked and just out of alignment.
Sure.
Um, but even up until the night before the crime, I was still very much like that was my source of comfort, you know? So it's like I'm addicted to narcotics and I'm also sucking on a baby bottle to give me comfort.
That is so hard for me to wrap my head around. How do
Mhm.
you feel about that when you think about it?
It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre now looking back on it.
But in
But that was my normal.
right, so in the during that time, you
Mhm.
didn't know any different.
No, like that was my normal.
What is people's reaction similar to mine, where it's just like you truly are addicted to narcotics and drinking out of baby
Yeah,
bottle?
yeah, it's two ends of a spectrum and somehow I landed right between them.
And then the night of the crime happens, and then you couldn't take the baby bottle to prison.
Right, no.
So what was that like? Was it sort of like a cold turkey cut off the bottle sort of deal?
Correct. Like, I had taken the narcotics.
Mhm.
I didn't pack a baby bottle. I just kind of left my old life behind entirely.
So in some ways that had to be liberating.
It was liberating, but also scary. It was new territory. Like for me, when I'm trying something new or I'm entering into a zone that I've never experienced before, I get a lot of anxiety about it.
Yeah. I mean, rightfully so. I feel like your entire life had to be built off of anxiety.
Hmm.
I cannot imagine. So CPS comes just one time in
Just one time,
your entire life.
entire life.
I don't even have words because I've seen CPS get involved in situations for much, much less
Hmm.
and either do something or don't. And so when you look back, I mean, at the time, did it even cross your mind to tell CPS what was going on?
I didn't even know who they were. So I want to make it clear that when I grew up, like, okay, so most parents, to kind of discipline their children, they're like, oh, the boogeyman's going to get you.
Right.
Okay. So my mom never said the boogeyman. My mom said the state. So I grew up being afraid of people that I thought were bad people
Right.
that were going to take me away from her, and they were called the state. And so what I didn't know back then was she was telling me to be afraid of CPS. And I didn't know that then. It wasn't until after I got out of prison that I kind of figured it all out.
Right, right.
Um, and so when they came, I didn't know who they were. I'm like, do they work with the police? And they're asking me questions like, do I have bruises on my arms and legs?
Right. And did
I
you?
I didn't. I didn't at that point in time. I didn't. However, they weren't asking me the right
Right.
questions, and that is kind of like where I fell through. That's kind of like where I put a lot of like guilt on me.
Mhm.
Is because I'm like, well, why didn't I just tell them this?
Well, you were a kid, you didn't know any different, and you were
Mhm.
also told to be basically taught to be afraid of them.
Exactly. So I'm like, even though at this point I would have been a teenager,
Right.
but having the mindset of someone much younger because I was sheltered to be that way.
And also
So,
believed to be that I think
yes.
it was what, 4 years?
Yeah,
How old are you today?
I am 33.
33. And
Yes.
you would have thought that you were what, I guess 29, right? Like if this still
Correct.
continued.
It was always like every year of an advancement was like 2 years knocked back down.
Okay.
So it was progressive. It
Right.
wasn't, when I was 10, she would say I was 9. So it started with the 1 year and then 2 year, and then it just progressed to more years
Okay.
as I got older.
Because it's easier to kind of hide the years as you
Hmm.
get older, right?
Hmm.
Like you could pass for 29, sitting
Hmm.
in front of me today.
Right.
And so that makes sense. I can't understand how when you were talking about in the book, you were talking about the medical records and the name spellings were off and then
Hmm.
the dates of birth were changed
Correct.
and those all sort of slipped through the
Hmm.
cracks too.
Hmm. And it's really shocking to me because even in certain medical records, there is descriptions of certain illnesses. So my mother described me as paralyzed from the waist down, but in certain transcripts there is quadriplegic,
Mhm.
paraplegic. So it is. I'm like, there's a difference in the two. So if you're a doctor, my eyes would be looking at that and automatically want to correct what's wrong. So it's like the medical records are basically scattered to the wind in inaccuracy, and it's so hard to piece together any sort of sense.
Well, she's going doctor to doctor.
Doctor to doctor. Yeah.
Maybe some of the files are not going with her, right?
Correct. I She did not transfer
Mhm.
them to one hospital to another.
Right.
So when the new doctor would ask for old records, she would claim that they were all, washed away in Hurricane Katrina because back in 2005, there was still that transfer from hard copy
Yep.
records to computer
Even
digital.
now, I think that they
So,
still struggle with that,
yeah.
right? Like I moved from Pennsylvania to Delaware and, my doctors were asking for records and I was like, I don't have those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's sort of easy to
Yeah,
lose the paper
lose them.
trail. So your mom would drug herself to sleep sometimes,
She's
whether
prescribed Ambien.
right. So not abusing it
Right,
necessarily.
not abusing it, no.
When she would go to sleep, I know that in parts of the book you talked about still being in your wheelchair, but
Mhm.
were there ever times that you did get out of your wheelchair and walk while she was asleep?
There would be times, so, like, if she had to go run an errand, there was times as I got older
Right.
that I did wanna stretch my legs and get out of the wheelchair, and so, some of the most freeing times that I had was I would play CDs on the boombox and
Mhm.
just dance.
Yeah.
That was my freedom,
Did she
but it
know
was
that you were doing that?
she didn't, she did not because I would be in trouble for walking even inside the house.
Oh, wow. So then did you lose muscle mass in your legs because you were in the wheelchair so much or no?
I didn't lose muscle mass,
No.
no, because I still, like, every once in a while, I would move my legs here and there, not meaning to, but, she would, have to correct me and be like, "Stop moving your legs."
At what point did you realize that you were not actually needing the wheelchair? Like, how old do you think you were?
I mean, I always knew that I could walk, and I've always been honest about that, but it was and goes right into the title. This is why I wanted to have the word stand in the title, is because yes, I knew that I could walk. However, my mom didn't let me get out of the chair. So it was like I was forced to be in the chair.
That is so wild. I can't imagine. And it has to be, obviously, don't want to speak ill of the dead, right? But like that has to be mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
As a mom, I can't imagine, doing these things to to my own
Right.
child, let alone any child. But
Yeah.
there has to be something deeper there. And I wish that we had more answers as far as that goes.
Absolutely. That's where I feel like, maybe in a sense the system failed her.
Yeah.
And the way we grew up in southern Louisiana, particularly in my family, we don't talk about mental health.
Right.
Growing up in the 90s, it wasn't really talked about.
Right.
Um, you're either labeled weird or just different or
Crazy.
crazy. Like
Hmm.
those are the terms that you grew up with in the 90s.
Right.
And sadly, she would have needed therapy. She would have needed medication. Um, but she didn't get those things.
Right. Right. She couldn't have because nobody was willing to. It's always you're crazy. And
Yeah.
I think that raising awareness about it now is also, I mean, we talk about mental health all the time, right? Like
Hmm.
in where we are today in life, I
Right.
feel like we talk about it all the time. And if they had that, it might be different.
Exactly.
But, who's to say? So you meet Dan,
Hmm.
and you still drank from a bottle at this time, and you
Hmm.
pack the bottle to go to Dan's house. Did he already know this?
He didn't know. I didn't tell him a lot. I didn't tell him I had a feeding tube. I didn't tell him about necessarily how weird my life was and how different it was. There was certain things that came up in conversations, like I could walk, um, and obviously because I ran away that night.
Yeah.
Um, but he was oblivious to a lot of what was going on.
And Dan was an adult that you met at a convention,
Correct.
and you guys had a romantic interest in each other?
I mean, it was I had a crush on him.
Right.
And I think he thought that I was cute, but it wasn't to the point where it was a relationship.
Okay, but you guys maybe had a little bit of an
Yeah, I
interest, a
was like,
fling.
he's cute.
How old is he? How old was he?
He was 36,
And he thought you were how old?
15 at the time.
So that would be a pedophile, right?
I don't like saying that word. I don't like
That would be,
labeling someone anything. I don't like
okay.
labels put on me, so that's why I don't put labels on
Okay,
other people.
fair.
That's what I'm
Okay. But it's questionable. It's
saying.
definitely questionable behavior. So your mom threatened to, or she did actually like out him as, someone who liked children.
Correct. So, once my mom brought me back home after running away and catching me with Dan, that's whenever she started to like call the people that like knew about it in a very vague way.
Okay.
And so she claimed that Dan kidnapped me, that he took me to somewhere, and that like I was safe, I was found. Um, w- all the while I was chained to a bed at this time. So she's
Because you ran to Dan's.
because I ran to Dan's.
And have you had communications with Dan since?
No.
Never. He's never reached out to make sure you were good and okay.
No, we had a text exchange
Mhm.
like the day that I got arrested. Um, and he had texted me and he's like, "Everybody says you're missing. Are you okay?"
That was the text.
That was the text. And I never had any communication since.
Wow. He was because he was scared. He was on parole, right? You found out that or house arrest?
It wasn't house arrest. I think I found out that it was like probation,
Probate.
parole,
Okay. And then
probation, parole.
he would have gotten in trouble probably for talking to you at that point.
Probably,
Okay.
yeah.
Makes sense. Was this to Dan's where you ask the neighbor, or is this the second time that you run away, that you get to the neighborhood and you knock on somebody random's
That
door?
was the first time. So
So
yeah, that was with Dan. Yeah, that
okay.
was
So he's in the
him.
hospital. Okay. So
Yeah.
you just knock on some random person's
I
door?
did. So, it was the community, the housing community that was right on the side of the Habitat for Humanity community.
Okay.
So it was literally up the street, and
Okay.
I knock on the first person's door that I see.
And you're like, my
I'm like, I called him my boyfriend,
yeah, yeah.
and I was like, my boyfriend is in the hospital. Can I get a ride?
They didn't know who you were?
They didn't know who I was, but I wore a long blonde wig. I still remember what I was wearing. I had a long blonde wig. I had a oversized, like an too big of a red bra. It was like two sizes too big. A black tank top, jeans that were too big, and a Harry Potter hoodie.
Did they think you were on drugs?
I probably looked like I
It's like,
was.
what did they say to you?
They're like, okay. I mean, it was a nice man. It was probably like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he gave me the ride. But
He took you?
yes,
And then you get to the hospital and you're like, "Hey, Dan, what's up?"
yeah,
And y'all just hung
but
out in the hospital.
yeah. Well, he was released within 20 minutes,
Oh, okay.
and so his cousin was there with him, and
Right.
so his cousin had drove us back to the friend's house that he was staying at.
Okay. And they also didn't know who you were, like what
They
your
were
story was.
asleep when we
Okay.
got there. It wasn't until the morning where the man, the husband, comes in the room and asks me my name.
Mhm.
And stupid as all I can be, I'm like, Gypsy, I'm Dan's girlfriend.
Oh
I'm
my God.
so
Yeah.
stupid.
And then he's like, "Your mom's here."
Yeah, an hour later, your mom's here.
And you were convinced that she was going to let you continue to have a
She
friendship
did.
with Dan.
She did. She did. She's like, if you come back with me, I'll let you have a friendship with him. I'll let you see him. I'll let you talk to him. Just come back with me. And I believed her, and I went back with her.
And then at that point, that's before the shed incident.
Correct.
Okay. So the second attempt to escape was in 2012.
Hmm.
And what was the mindset at this time? You're like, I already had a failed escape. You
Hmm.
go back home with your mom. She tells you you can have Dan as a friend, but you were like, no, I need to escape still. Because
Hmm.
she changed you to the bed
That was
between incidents.
yes. So I mean, that was definitely like a cracking point. Is that I never submitted, I guess you can say, fully to the idea that this was going to be my life.
So did that first attempt give you almost like a hope that you're like, okay, I didn't do this right the first time. I could do it the second time.
Exactly, exactly. I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I make certain differences. So, I pack a bag in the middle of the night. I'm going to attempt to leave to just go anywhere because at that point, I hadn't texted with Dan, so I had no idea where he was.
Okay.
But I was just gonna run
And just see where,
and see where I was gonna be homeless. I didn't care what I had to do. I was just gonna go.
but that one failed as well.
It failed as well. She found my backpack. And that's whenever there was a standoff, and that's whenever I shot her with the BB gun.
Okay. So that is actually the next question I have
Mhm.
is why did your mom have the BB gun to begin with? Why did she buy that from Walmart?
So she had bought that because she had told me it was to keep Dan away. So
Did you think it was a real gun?
no,
You knew it was a
I
BB
knew it
gun.
was a BB gun,
Okay.
which in certain documentaries and transcripts and stuff like that, some people are like, oh well, she didn't know it was a BB gun. No, I knew it was a BB gun.
Okay.
So
So you didn't think it was going to kill her or
no,
anything?
no.
Okay. And when you shot her with it, it was to scare her or did you think it would kill her?
Oh no, it was just a scare.
Okay. Okay. Did you get out of the wheelchair to shoot her with the BB gun?
I didn't. I stayed in the wheelchair the whole time.
what is the state of the frame of mind for that? Like, I
I
guess
have no idea. It's when you are in a state of being so
right,
afraid, logic goes out the window.
right.
So I may have